Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone here to the CPRA webinar on professional development certification. My name is Vishna Zaborski-Breton, and I am the Director of Communications with the CPRA. We're just having a few more people join us, so we're just taking our time getting going today, but we have great interest in the CPRA professional development certification from across Canada, and we'll be having a few more people joining us. CPRA has been hosting webinars over the last several years for parks and recreation practitioners in Canada. The webinars generally have been providing tools, resources, and best practices for these professionals working in the parks and recreation field. Topics of our past webinars have included the framework for recreation in Canada, physical literacy, connecting Canadians to nature, and recreation programming in the after-school time period. CPRA has a full listing of our webinars on our website, and you can learn about our past presentations and future presentations as well by visiting www.cpra.ca. You can also follow CPRA on Facebook and Twitter, and I would encourage you to do that. I'd like to let everyone know that today's presentation is going to be recorded, and a link to the recording will be posted on the CPRA website for future reference and for those participants that were not able to join us today. During today's presentation, there will be an opportunity for you to participate in the discussion through polls that are going to be popping up on your screens. You can also ask questions via the chat box on the right-hand bottom of your screen. There will be a few of us on hand to help our presenter guide through the questions during the presentation. We'll also be asking all participants to take a couple minutes and provide us some feedback through some evaluation questions at the end of the webinar as well. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the Leisure Information Network for providing us with the technical support for today's webinar. And should we need any assistance, Jennifer Peltier is on the call with us today. I'd like to welcome our presenter today. We have Craig Cameron, who is the Director of the Canadian Parks and Recreation Association Professional Development Certification Program. We also have Alex Nowicki, who's the Director of Communications with the Alberta Recreation and Parks Association. Craig has been leading the administration team for the Professional Development Program and has been heavily involved in the CPRA Professional Development Task Force, which took part in the development of the program. Craig, when he's not wearing his CPRA Professional Development Certification hat, is also the Senior Recreation Liaison with the Physical Education and Recreation Faculty at the University of Alberta. Alex is going to be helping out today with answering any questions that we have during the presentation. So once again, feel free to post any questions in the chat box. So with all that, I'd like to turn things over to Craig at this point in time. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you, Vishna. Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking your time today to learn a little bit more about what I think is a pretty exciting initiative for CPRA and for parks and recreation practitioners from coast to coast. As Vishna mentioned, Alex Nowicki has joined us. Some of you may have already been in touch with Alex over the last few months with your questions and queries. So I'm thankful that he's joining us today to continue on that process, and he will be there through that info@cprapdc.ca email address in the future as well. So today's going to be an overview of the course. We're going to talk a little bit about what the professional development program is. We'll talk about how we got to the point that we're at today in terms of the evolution of the program. We'll talk a little bit about why professional development matters, and then we're going to dive into really the meat and potatoes of the program and give you a good sense for how the program is constructed, so the logic of the program and the steps that are involved in terms of navigating the two certification and recertification phases. We're also going to spend some time looking at the website, which is a huge part of this program, and navigating the website itself, as well as the online learning platform and the registration system. So thank you again for your time, and without any further ado, we'll head into the presentation. So I want to start with some key terms around the CPRA Professional Development Certification Program, and I think it's important to start with these terms because we spent a lot of time in building the program, kind of discussing what we wanted the program to be and how it was going to impact the sector. So if it is a professional development certification program, it's really important that we have a clear understanding, both from a national level as well as at an individual level, what those terms mean. So when we're talking about professional development here today, we're talking about a process or a program that engages in activities that make a substantial contribution to increasing a member's capacity to perform his or her role and advance his or her career. And it's really that notion of driving at what the members' needs are, as well as balancing that with what the sector is looking for, and the balance between those key features are at the core of our professional development system. The other key term in the program here is obviously certification. So what is it that we're certifying? It's important to understand that this is as a first step in Canada towards a professional development system. What we're certifying here is engagement in the professional development system and the professional development process. So successful completion of the program will result in an individual having met a certain minimum standards towards their continuous professional learning. And I'm going to emphasize the word continuous here as we move on to explore the program in a bit more detail. It's a foundation principle of the program that certification doesn't stop at the end of a course or at the end of a specific time period, but it's something that we're encouraging all of our members to engage in throughout the entire length of their career. So the certification program that you are familiar with today, or we're going to talk about today, it's important to understand that it is an iterative process, so we do expect that over time the program will change and evolve. But it's also important to appreciate that the program that you see today comes at the end of a long line of consultation, conversation, and research around what other groups are doing in terms of their professional development. So this is a CPRA initiative. We'll talk a bit about the process that we went through for CPRA's approval on this program. But it's also important to understand that CPRA, through its distributed leadership model, has contracted with the Alberta Recreation and Parks Association to deliver the program. So as Vishna mentioned at the start, I work for ARPA, as does Alex Nowicki, and in this context, really working on behalf of CPRA to deliver the professional development certification program. It's important for two reasons to point this out. One, because you will notice at some points as you navigate the professional development system that you may get communication with an ARPA email address or an ARPA web address. Again, that's because we're delivering the program. It's also important to understand this because in terms of building CPRA's capacity throughout the sector, it was decided that it was important to share some of that responsibility and share some of that leadership. And ARPA has the support of CPRA and its members to deliver this program. So the process that we went through in developing the program, and it really started back probably as early as 2012 and perhaps a little bit before that. We'll look at two pieces of research that ARPA commissioned, looking at national interest in a Parks and Recreation professional development system, as well as what was happening in other countries and other professional organizations across the country and elsewhere. There was also several committees that were involved in the development of the program as well. So again, under ARPA's leadership model, there was a provincial committee that was looking at the program and helping to start the conversation around what the program would entail and how it might look. From there, that information was shared with a CPRA's task force on professional development. This task force was comprised of members of all the PT associations, and over the 2-year span of that committee's run, it did have representation from each jurisdiction. This task force was an important committee because it was really CPRA's first chance for national input and national voice in the development of the program. So all the decisions that we'll talk about and all the elements of the program that you see really had a national voice in terms of how the program would relate to practitioners, whether they were in Newfoundland, Nunavut, or BC, and really looking at how do we balance the needs of creating a national voice while at the same time being able to give a good, strong voice to provincial and even local needs. CPRA's task force then also worked with another committee with CPRA, so they had a strategic initiatives group, which was a third level of organization that had a chance to vet the program and provide comment and feedback. And then finally, in November of 2014, so almost a year ago now, the CPRA membership had a chance to vote on whether or not they would adopt the program. And the fact that we're here today is the result of a positive vote there from CPRA and a desire to move forward with Canada's first and only professional development certification program for parks and recreation practitioners. So I mentioned that 2 surveys were done. The first survey that we're looking at here is a national leadership survey. This survey was conducted between 2012, June of 2012, and June 2013. The National Leadership Survey involved 3 different groups. So it was a survey that went out to all the active boards of the provincial and territory associations. We asked each of those associations to share that with up to 10 people within their province or territory that they saw as leaders. And that secondary group had a nice balance of previous board members as well as other general members within the province or territory. This survey is important because it really provided us with the motivation for moving forward to develop the certification program that we are talking about today. So a couple of highlights from that report. I guess it's nice to see that 95% of those who filled out the survey agreed that professional development was critical to providing high-quality programs and services. All of those respondents agreed that PD, professional development, should be formally recognized. 94% agreed that certification is an effective way to formally recognize professional development. And there was 100% agreement that competencies needed to provide a strong foundation to any professional development program. So those 4 insights, again, from that National Leadership Survey were key pieces in terms of driving the creation of the professional development program. The second report that I want to highlight comes from a survey that we did of some provincial organizations in Alberta and BC primarily. We looked at national organizations in Canada, those working in the parks and recreation sector, as well as other sectors such as engineering or human resources. And we also looked at some international parks and recreation organizations to see what other countries were doing in terms of their national certification and professional development programs. As a result of this survey, we took away some great learnings in terms of how we would shape our program here in Canada. Key things or advice from those other organizations was to think big, and I think that we've reflected that in our program today. To start simple, we needed to reward continuous professional development. Again, that notion that certification doesn't end with a piece of paper, but it's an ongoing process. A notion of including peer review, and we'll come back to that as we talk about the certification process. It needs to provide a variety of different learning opportunities that are high quality. The notion that we shouldn't wait for perfection, but we should look to build and improve the program based on the feedback and the participation of members across our country. and the idea that we needed to garner broad support for the program. Again, I mentioned before the number of committees that were involved in developing this program, as well as the leadership survey, and those were key pieces in terms of gaining national support for the program. Core competencies were identified as one of those key pieces to any professional program, and so I want to take a minute just to highlight the core competencies that frame our professional development certification program. These core competencies were developed, they're presented here as Recreation and Parks Competencies 1.0. In reality, there was two, or at least two versions of these competencies that have been developed prior to this. So this is really an ongoing iterative process with the competencies that shape or are important to working in the parks and recreation sector here in Canada. So the core competencies were developed through consultation, peer consultation with leadership throughout Alberta, as well as vetted through those national committees that I spoke about, the task force, as well as the CPRA board. There are 19 core competencies that have been identified for working in the parks and recreation field. For the purpose of this program, those 19 competencies have been organized into 5 different themes or core competency areas. The first core competency area is foundations. Foundations focuses on the values, attitudes, and philosophies that are at the center of the parks and recreation sector. The second competency area is leadership. Leadership focuses on the skills and attitudes and needed to influence and transform personal, organizational, and community capacity, as well as foster a shared vision for parks and recreation across the country. The third competency area is community development, focusing on the ability and processes for engaging communities in creating a sustainable parks and recreation opportunities that meet their specific needs. The fourth competency area is organizational management, which is creating opportunities to implement and evaluate different services and activities. The fifth competency area is service development, which focuses on ensuring organizational effectiveness and efficiency. So I put these competencies up front because as we move on to look at the construction of the program and some of the courses that you'll be taking, these competencies really become the backbone for the professional development educational choices that we present through CPRA and that you'll choose as individual participants in the program. So reflecting back on the National Leadership Survey, it was seen that professional development was important, but more specifically, why was professional development seen as important? And there's a couple of things I'd like to highlight in terms of why professional development is important. First of all, I'd like to tie our attention back to a framework for recreation in Canada approved in 2015, Pathways to Wellbeing. As you'll remember, that document has 5 different key initiatives. So active living, inclusion and access, connecting people with nature, supportive environments, and recreation capacity. And it's in that 5th focus area, recreation capacity, that we really see one of the prime motivators for a national professional development system. So recreation capacity speaks to ensuring continued growth and sustainability of the recreation sector. In particular, item 5.4 under that recreation capacity talks about the development and implementation of high-quality training and competency-based capacity development programs for organizations and individuals, in this context, professionals, practitioners, and volunteers, who work in recreation with a particular focus on under-resourced rural and remote areas. And I would like to point out again, or highlight that last statement in terms of under-resourced remote and rural areas. As we look at this program, one of the key elements of it is the ability to access and be a part of the program regardless of where you might be located. So looking beyond our sector and more broadly to say, why is professional development important? We looked at some of the research primarily from the business area, to say, why do other industries engage in professional development? And so some of those key reasons for engaging in a system, a standardized system of professional and development, and in particular professional development that speaks to the needs of your sector, are as follows. So professional development can help to create a knowledgeable and adaptable workforce. More importantly, or just as important, it increases employee satisfaction as well as staff confidence, and can increase the level of innovation and independence in a workforce. And when we look at it from a national standpoint, the idea of building capacity within a sector has been something that has been talked about for quite some time in the parks and recreation sector across Canada. And this is a great opportunity to actually engage in that. So with that as background, this is really our first opportunity to have a look at the professional development system. So the CPRA Professional Development Certification Program is divided into two phases. We're going to spend some time just talking in general what those phases are, and then we'll dive a bit deeper to the specific details. So the certification program has two phases. The first phase of the program is certification. Certification has three key steps to it. The first step is belonging to a CPRA member association. So in consultation with our committee structures at the CPRA level, it was felt that it was important as part of supporting the sector and supporting our provincial and territorial associations that those participating in the program would be a part of those associations. Second is the need to register for the program. So we'll look at the registration system and how that works. So each participant is encouraged to register for the program. Once registered for the program, there are three tasks that a participant would have to complete. There are 2 online courses, as well as a knowledge presentation. All of those steps, so belonging to a CPRA member association, registering for the program, and taking those 2 courses and the knowledge presentation, needs to occur within a 2-year time frame. Any participant can complete the work in a shorter time frame if they so desire, but we've put the 2-year time frame for completion on there to try and motivate participants to complete the program in a timely fashion, but also to impress upon them the sense of importance for engaging in professional development programs. Once an individual is certified, that certification is valid for 3 years. But as we talked about, professional development, continuous professional development doesn't stop there. It's an ongoing process. So if an individual is interested in maintaining their certification, they'll be doing some work during that 3-year certification period. Over the course of that 3 years that they hold their professional development certification, a participant will then be engaged in 3 different national workshops. Again, those workshops will be carried online, the similar online platform used for the certification courses. As well, that participant will be collecting learning credits, and we'll look at the learning credit framework and the different variety of ways that those credits can be collected. Finally, at the end of that 3-year certification period, that individual or participant would apply for recertification, again demonstrating they completed their workshops and had collected their learning credits. And that cycle, that 3-year cycle, would continue on for as long as the individual wants to hold the CPRA professional development certification. I think, Jennifer, we'd had some questions that you were going to share with the group, and at any time that you'd like to start to share some of those, feel free. Nice. It's great to see that we have some voices from across the country joining us today. And those voices have been reflected in the program as well. So the program was launched, it was approved in November 2014. It was actually launched with our first courses here this past September. And I'm pleased to say that we have registered for our first course 20 different participants. And those participants come from 8 different provinces and territories across the country. So we talked about the importance of having a national program and a national voice, and I'm happy to say that that has been reflected in terms of those participants, early participants in the program. In designing the professional development programs, we have a question now about how long you've been working in the sector. I think the next question coming up will be asking you about your educational background. In designing the program, we identified really 3 different types of people working in the parks and recreation sector. There were those people who come to the sector with some sort of post-secondary training related to the parks and recreation sector. There's a set of folks who have come to work in the parks and recreation sector with maybe post-secondary training in an unrelated field. I think of example of engineering or human resources, perhaps public health. And we also identified a third group, and that group are those who come to work in our sector who maybe don't have any formal training and have come in through their volunteer experiences or through their commitment to their community. So one of the challenges for us was designing a program that met the needs of all 3 of those different participants. You'll see that especially in the recertification process, there's a great deal of flexibility for individuals to tailor their learning to meet their individual professional development needs. What we do see, though, in that certification phase is really a need to create a common voice and a shared experience for parks and recreation practitioners. So one of the common questions that we had, or frequently asked questions that we've had in this, is there prior learning recognition? If I'm someone who comes to the sector with a degree, a post-secondary degree in the field, can I have some recognition for that, or do I get to move through the program a little bit faster? And again, this was a point of great discussion in working through our provincial and national committee structure. And it was decided that in terms of creating that national voice and that common vision, it was important to have all practitioners, no matter what their previous experiences were, come through the program in a similar fashion. Having those 3 different groups come through the program together, again, as I said, creates that common knowledge and experience that they can carry forward. It's important in terms of creating a peer development and supporting our peers in their own professional development. And when we look at the actual design of the courses and the importance of sharing conversation, having those different perspectives and those different experiences were seen as a key contribution to creating a positive learning environment for all. So you may have noticed that our professional development program relies or has some connections with partnerships across the country. I'd like to point out just 2 of those different groups. One is the World Urban Parks Association. This is an international parks-focused consortium. CPRA has signed an MOU with this particular group that allows our members, those taking our certification program, to also become a part of the World Urban Parks Academy. The World Urban Parks Academy has 2 distinct certification programs that they offer. They offer a certified parks professional as well as a certified international parks professional. Being a member or being part of the CPRA's professional development certification program allows an individual to qualify for that international parks professional designation. At the same time, in working with the University of Alberta and the Physical Education and Recreation faculty, they are looking to develop some post-baccalaureate certificates focusing on parks and recreation sector. The first certificate that they're developing is one in Aboriginal sport and recreation. And partnering with the University of Alberta through our CPRA professional development program will provide an opportunity for those working in the field that don't have post-secondary education to have that prior learning recognition and be able to engage in university training. So that's a fairly unique partnerships, or two fairly unique partnerships, and two of several that we're looking to develop as the program evolves. So let's look a little bit more at the details of the program. So as I mentioned, there's two phases to the certification program. The first phase is certification, which involves two online courses. The first course is in the core competencies, focusing on the 5 areas that I mentioned earlier. The second course focuses on current issues and trends. Both of those courses are developed online and delivered online, and they're offered through what we have described as a paced learning process. What I mean by paced learning is that each course is broken down into 5 modules. Individuals can work ahead on those modules, but they're not allowed to fall behind. So within each module, a participant will have 2 weeks to complete the work. When they complete the work will be entirely up to their schedule. After completing those classes, there is a knowledge presentation. The knowledge presentation has 2 parts to it. The first part is a written presentation or a written paper, a case study of an issue or a trend that that participant is facing. The second part is a presentation to a peer review panel. Both of those pieces, so the written work and the peer presentation, can be done online. The peer review panels will be established through the PT associations with, in the first iteration of the program, with leaders from their associations that are identified by that provincial or territorial association. And again, you have 2 years to complete those 3 steps. Upon certification, your certification lasts for 3 years. An individual then has 3 years to complete the necessary steps for recertification. Recertification includes online workshops. There's 3 online workshops that are needed for recertification. Those workshops match up, again, with the core competency areas that were mentioned earlier. The workshops as well are part of building that national voice and the shared experience, delivered entirely online. The learning credit is a chance for you to customize your learning plans. There are 5 different areas that we can collect our learning credits in, and we'll look at those in just a moment. Important to understand as part of the recertification process is that you'll collect your learning credits in many cases for learning or professional development that you're already engaged in. And this will happen or continue along a 3-year cycle. So I'd like to, at this point, take a break from the PowerPoint slides and shift over to our website and give you a bit of a tour of the website in the context of the program. So for those of you who hadn't had a chance to check it out yet, cprapdc.ca is the home site for all of our professional development program. A couple of the nice features of this is that it's really a one-stop shop for all of the professional development program. It has an opportunity here to register for programs and for courses. There's a link here as well to the online learning platform or that online school. And great tabs here with more information about the program, the certification steps, recertification, as well as resources and contact information. So if we click on the certification tab, we see again that program model or the key steps needed to complete the certification and maintain your certification. We have an opportunity to work through those learning steps, as more information on the certification courses. As I mentioned, there are 2 certification courses, the first being the Introduction to Core Competencies in Parks and Recreation. The nice thing about this particular course is that one of the final assignments or final projects in here is actually creating your own professional development learning plan. The second course being Current Issues and Trends in Recreation and Parks, which is an opportunity to discuss national issues and trends, but also share some of those local learnings and local issues. Course dates and registration for both of those can be found again through our main website. The recertification process gives us again all the details in terms of recertification, walks us through the steps as outlined earlier. And one of the things that I'd like to point out here through the recertification process is those learning credits. So recertification requires 75 learning credits. Those learning credits can be captured in a number of ways. It can be through continuing education, so formal learning activities. It could be through leadership experiences, so working with as a mentor or mentee in a program. It could be through some of your instruction, research, or publications. Through special work initiatives, so tasks that would take you outside of your everyday job, as well as tasks that may look to align your work with the recreation framework, as well as volunteering. So again, it's not just about in terms of traditional or formal learning opportunities, but it is looking at building your competencies through a variety of different mechanisms. Those professional learning credits can be tracked through a learning credit profile sheet. Thank you to SPRA for volunteering one of its fictitious members. And we can see as we fill out our log, it gives us an opportunity to link back with those continuous learning credit areas, specific types of subcategories within each of those learning credit categories, and a bit more detail on the specific activity itself. These bits of information will be important in terms of the recertification process and the evaluation mechanism for recertification. Interesting thing to point out here is that while there's lots of space to collect those learning credits or lots of opportunity to fill in your opportunities, that 75 credits can be collected quite easily when we start to look across the different categories in terms of how those learning credits can be collected. So again, whether it's through continuing education, work projects or initiatives, or perhaps volunteering for your provincial or national associations. More information on those learning credits, again, can be found through our website. One of the resources that we have available to us here, what I'd like to point out this time, is our bursaries. So in working with our provincial and territorial associations, one of the things that ARPA and CPRA has tried to do is identify bursaries that can support our members or support participants in engaging in the program. So I mentioned that being able to access the program from rural or remote areas was important. We recognize that cost is also can be a barrier to some of our participants, and so it's important for us to try and identify opportunities for that financial support to partake in the program. One of the national programs or grants that we've identified is a National Grants Leadership Program through PricewaterhouseCoopers, as well as several provincial bursaries. In the context here, I know that Alberta is mentioned on here. Saskatchewan, I believe, has a similar bursary as do other provinces, that it's a provincial federal grant that can cover up to 2/3 of the program costs. So as the program evolves, this is one of those areas that we're continuing to work with PT associations to help them identify potential bursary opportunities for their members. As well, you'll find on this page a series of frequently asked questions. At this point, I'd like to take us from the website right into the learning platform. So remember, we have that login right from the top of our central page. As you register for the program, you'll be given a username and password that takes you straight into our online learning platform. So the nice thing about this is that for those of you who are familiar with webinars, it does have that capacity, but online learning is really more than just a webinar experience. It provides an opportunity for participants to chat with each other and build that online network. It also provides an opportunity to share national messages and build that national framework or narrative. And from a participant standpoint, it gives you an opportunity to keep track of your learning credits and your learning courses. So we see here that Bob Smith, who is registered for the certification program, he gets initially put into an online learning orientation. So for those who aren't familiar with the online learning platform or any online learning platform, it's an opportunity to go through and become familiar with some of the key steps and key spaces that will be important for success in the program. It also shows Bob which courses he's registered for. So we can see that Bob's registered for both of his certification courses. The courses that are highlighted in blue are live links, so the courses that are active or currently active. The course we see here offered in winter of 2016 is an upcoming course and will become active once that start date has been reached. If we take a quick peek inside the class, we see again those different modules in the course. Again, those modules linking back to the core competencies identified earlier. And we get to see again through the online posting opportunities some of that conversation or back and forth between instructors and students. The module seen here, so module 1, follows a fairly similar process to all of our online learning courses. There will be a series of activities or learnings that you'll engage with on your own time, as well as opportunities for group discussion and perhaps group postings. So again, the flexibility to learn at your own pace while at the still time keeping that national connection and camaraderie amongst practitioners. The other thing that I'd like to point out here, again, we have that email or messaging function as well as a communication board for members across the country. So we've seen the website. We've talked about the online learning platform and seen where those courses are and how we can access those. We've got a quick glimpse in terms of a course outline and a course delivery. We've talked about bursaries to the program. The last thing that I'd like to show you is where you could register. So again, as I mentioned, through our main website, there is a registration link in the top right-hand corner. That takes you straight to our registration desk, where again, there's information on the process and the outline of the program. We have an opportunity here to register for the certification program itself. We could register for our certification courses, as well as our recertification workshops. Once inside the certification portion, you have an opportunity to pick which element of the certification program you'd like to purchase. So again, registration or one of our 2 courses. Inside there, we have an opportunity to select which course date we'd like to register for. Once inside, the participant is directed through a series of registration steps, which sets you up with an online account. That online account will then provide you with access into the online learning platform. I'd like to mention here as well that for those who may be working with their own organization to register multiple staff members within their organization, we do have the ability to register and to share those registrations across organizations. At the same time, in terms of trying to reduce that price point, CPRA is offering a discount to bulk purchases of 5. So for every 4 people that you register in a program, CPRA is offering you a 5th registration for free. So price for some, again, can be an interesting point of conversation. We have a registration fee for certification, which is $290. That $290 provides you with access to the online learning platform, as well as your knowledge covers your knowledge presentation. Again, that knowledge presentation being involved with your peer review panel. So the 2 certification courses are $465 each, bringing the total certification price to $1,220. With that, so recognizing that $1,220 can be a lot for an individual to buy upfront, the opportunity is there to buy each one of these pieces as your schedule permits or as your finances dictate. So thank you very much for spending your lunch hour with me or a portion of your day with me today. I'd like to encourage you to take that first step in registering for Canada's first and only professional development certification program. I'd like to remind you that you can register at any time online, that we have courses beginning regularly scheduled in January and September of each year. I'd like to encourage you to visit that cprapdc.ca to gain as much information or more information about the program. Remind you as well that there's bursaries available through your provincial associations as well as those listed through the national website, and to encourage those of you working with larger organizations to utilize that bulk discount rate. I see there has been some chatter on the chat line as I've been talking today, and I think Alex has done a pretty good job of answering those questions. I'd like to just open the conversation up to anyone else who would like to jump in and ask a question of something that maybe I haven't covered in detail yet today. Perhaps Jennifer, well, those are people are formulating their questions. If you'd like to share the last of our polls with our participants today, that would be great. So I see a question about when will this program be available in French. That's a great question and has been a question that's had a fair amount of discussion as well. So obviously in terms of developing the program and rolling out the program, cost is a factor. For that reason, we've focused on English offerings in the first year of the program. Part of that is trying to gain some input and information around French users or the need to provide for those French users. Alex, who I mentioned before, has a link through our website where he's compiling a list of individuals looking for courses offered in French. When we have a list or members close to 15 is kind of our break point for offering a French course, then we'll be looking to do that. In the meantime, you will find all the information on our program through the website in French and English.
Okay, perhaps I'll jump in at this point in time. It's Vishna again. Craig, thank you so very much for your presentation and the overview of the program and providing us with some insight into the platform as well. At this time, I'd love for everybody to fill out some of our evaluation questions. And certainly, if you have any questions that you might think of following the presentation, please feel free to contact myself at info@cpra.ca. Or Alex, can you perhaps just type in the email address for the PDC where folks can email you questions as well? But again, we'd just like to thank everyone for taking time today to learn about the CPRA program, and we appreciate all feedback about the program to date, and so we appreciate your comments. And if there isn't any other questions, I'll give, if someone has another question, they can feel free to pop it into the screen right now. And if not, perhaps we can sign off. And once again, I'd like to thank you all for attending. And Craig and Alex, thank you very much for your time and your presentation on the CPRA Professional Development Certification. And we always appreciate feedback on all of our webinars. And I thank you very much for joining us today. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.